How's it going, everybody? You're listening to the Let's Talk podcast, the show that brings you the latest in relevant and current trends and conversations about our daily living, the Bible, and also some very fun and unexpected points of view. With your hosts, Joey Santos and Brad Wilson.
Okay, let's get this rolling. Hey, Brad, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Doing good.
Joey, how are you doing?
Fantastic. Do you know? So this past Sunday we had a special guest. You took a little break from the stage, and we had a special guest, Kevin Payton, from Joshua's Place. So just to contextualize here a little bit, because I want us to just chat a little bit about serving our community.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about Joshua's Place. What is Joshua's Place here in this area in Ohio?
Well, Joshua's Place is it's a organization. Some people would call it a parachurch organization that just has a real passion. It was started. Kevin and his wife Nona started it, and just with a desire to care for, to help, to come alongside those in South Lebanon, those in the community that the poor, some of the less fortunate, people that have, as he talked about on Sunday, that have battled generational poverty, and not just a place that would serve and help these people, like providing things for them, but with a bigger emphasis of not only helping with their physical needs, but their spiritual needs as well, and helping these people, giving them more of an opportunity to get out of the kind of the situation or the lifestyle they're in, and to help equip them to move forward in life and to break some of these cycles that for some of these families, it could be generation after generation.
I mean, Joshua's Place is it's a pretty influential ministry around this area in Ohio, right? Mason and Lebanon and Morrow. Yep. I mean, they do some big stuff.
Yeah, they're obviously involved in the community. People familiar with their food cooperatives, where they help people with those needs. But then they're also they've been partnering and getting more and more involved with some of the local schools, of just helping. For instance, with some kids, and people may have heard about this, various places and schools where kids on Friday will take home, they'll load up a backpack full of different food and snacks for some of these kids that they may, going home on the weekend, who knows what they're going to eat or who knows what they're going to have, but helping to provide these kids with some food to get them through Friday after school back until they get there on Monday.
I mean, Mason, Ohio, it's a pretty wealthy area, right? Kings area in Lebanon. But it's kind of interesting because we've done this partnership before, a few years ago, which came to light the poverty that's underneath the appearance.
Yeah.
What we see, but we don't know, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's things that we see, but the things underneath that we don't know, and I think it really came to light, learning that teachers were, using their own personal money to buy some of these kids food because they didn't have any food, or the school is the only place for many kids, that's the only meal they want to have that day, which is crazy to think that today in Ohio, in America, you actually have families in that situation.
Yeah.
So let's just, as a church, as a community, how should we see this need? Like, how should we see and how should we approach? Should we actually have any strategy here beyond putting money in? putting money in is a pretty easy way to do it. Here's go do something. But is there something more than just putting money that the church should be doing right now to meet this need?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because the Bible is very prophetic in telling us that you'll always have the poor and less fortunate among you. Like that's never going to change. It was true. It was true back in Bible times. It was true during Jesus' ministry. It was true after that, and I mean it's true today, and it's going to be true 20, 30 years from now. So when you think about that, and we know that that's the case, and the question you asked, it is a important question. I mean, why do you think that it seems in a lot of the in American culture, why do you think it seems like a lot of people are, if they're given a choice, would rather just throw money at it? I mean, why do you think it's so easy for us to do that?
Well, I think for the most part, that's what we ask the most.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we that's what we ask. We say, hey, we need to help this initiative. We need money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, knowingly or not, we take that route as sometimes as leadership to say we need the resources, which we do. Mm-hmm. Like if we go on a mission trip, you've been to mission trips before, and you go to a mission trip, and you need the resources to go there and do what you need to do. But then there's the flip side of when you're there in person doing it, there's another effect to it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to say that we need one or the other. I think we need both, but I don't think we value the in-person experience of helping others as much as we value giving me the resources so we can actually do something with it. Which we're gonna need the resources if we're gonna feed the kids, if we're gonna provide to the kids the food they need or clothing. We're gonna need the resources, right? We're gonna need the money for it. Mm-hmm. But there's something about spiritual growth and community experience when you, alongside your church, your small group, your local community, you go together and you serve together. And I think that's really the impact that happens in people's lives that they end up missing for not doing that, for just giving the resources. And I don't want to, I think it's important. I think some people, when they give sacrificially. Mm-hmm. They really do. Because, I mean, it's not easy times right now. Right. So the fact that people give resources, it is an act of sacrifice, and they're giving their personal resources to help somebody. But I think there's a second step that builds a better community when people are actually doing together and they're serving together. So I think that's part of it. I think second is just the simple need of helping each other. And I think when you go to countries that's less fortunate than we are in America, you see them helping each other a lot more because they experience the need. So they experience each other's needs much, much more. Like I said, it took us a while here to learn what kind of a poverty goes underneath all the good things that we see in our own public schools. We see the best football teams, and we see all this money being poured into marching bands, and we see all these facilities that our public schools have, and we're like, our schools are doing well, whereas in reality, there's just underneath layer of real poverty and real suffering going on, and we got to be able to see through it and take action.
It's kind of like now people may not know this, so this is a fun fact for them, but you did some schooling in, was it Daytona?
Yeah.
All right. When you were in Daytona, were you staying when you were in school? Because I've never asked you this, but were you in were you staying in dorms or were you staying with
It was kind of housing, but yeah,
housing?
sharing with a lot of other students.
All right. So sometimes I think what we do, like in these communities here, it's like sharing housing with a bunch of guys in college. You know, the bathroom and the living conditions are terrible. You just don't look at that stuff. You're like, you know what? There's probably something spilled
Let's
over here.
pretend it's not there.
Yeah, we're like, you know, this bathroom would not pass any inspection, but I'm still gonna use it and shower in here and brush my teeth because I just have no choice. I think sometimes we choose in our communities, it's just like we're just going to be very selective with what we look at. But I want to ask a follow-up to this because I think you're getting at something good, and this may sound, depending on how you answer, it may sound as an indictment, but I don't think it's as much of an indictment of humanity as it's just a reality that we need to come to grasp with. But you talked about with the resources, and it is sacrificial, so we don't want to say that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think a question going along with that when it comes to serving others is, for most people, it comes down to an interesting question is, what do we value more? Other people and being able to help them, or our own time?
I know, and I think, America, by nature, is the most giving country in the planet. Mm-hmm. No other country gives more than America. Mm-hmm. And that's just reality. That's just the stats. Like, you can Google that, and you're going to show you the numbers, and you're going to see America over the top is the country that gives the most. But I think, again, here's something that we measure. Here's the measurements that really matter. Time. Because my time, it's what really matters to me. Mm-hmm. And when I put in my time, that's where I put my treasure. So mm-hmm. I think that's a big part of it. Mm-hmm. It is. It's what am I using my time for, and what am I dedicating my time for? So we use that. It's kind of interesting. You use that. You ask the question because that's exactly how we measure success in the digital church. In the digital church, we don't count heads, we count time. Mm-hmm. So my goal in an online church, in the digital platforms, is to count how many minutes people are spending time consuming the content that we offer, instead of how many heads are there, because really, how many heads really doesn't matter as much as how much time people are consuming my content. So when I look into YouTube, I want to make sure that I have thousands of hours of content being watched from the church, which tells me people are spending more time consuming our content that we offer. Mm-hmm. That's time. And I think if you bring that to reality in the church, is the same thing. We spend an hour and 15 minutes on Sunday morning that we call dedicated to God in church and all that. Mm-hmm. And then we spend another probably hour and a half in the small groups. And then let's see how many hours you spend serving. And let's compare that with everything else we do. And let's really do an inventory and realize how much time am I really, really giving to God. Mm-hmm. So it's not that hard. It's not really it's not hard a formula to figure it out what we're doing with our time, right? Mm-hmm. You've heard me saying this before. I've done that with my own staff when they ask, I don't have time to do this. Okay, let's sit down. Let's see how much time it's taking you to do this, and that, and then figure out, oh, hold on. There's like 10 hours left there. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. I think overall, I think life offers great things. And I think we should not lead people to think that the time you spend with your kids, raising your kids, is not valuable, is not godly. It is. The time you spend with your spouse is not, you should give up on all that to give to church. That's not at all what we're saying. Actually, it's the opposite. We want you to actually take what you learn from the church, you learn from the ministry, you learn by serving others, and pour into the people in your life, in your family. That's what community happens, and that's dedicating your time to God. But then, I'm sure there are times in your lives that we could replace it with things that actually could make an impact in someone's lives. And again, that's a very individual task that people should do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's I think to me, it's what's interesting about the day and age we live in, with all the things we have at our disposal, is it can be very difficult at times to discern something that's good for us or something that's bad for us. And sometimes things that you may say, this is bad for us, because it may take away some of our time or cause us to miss it. Inherently, they're not bad things, or they're not things like we think, well, I'm not doing something that's really bad. But it goes back to, if you want to maximize your time, and like we said in this discussion, is sometimes it's very easy to do something and then later on you're like, where did all this time go? And then when we look at certain things, where it comes down to just making a priority and having the conversations with ourselves of what we do. 'Cause I think about going on a mission trip. What's phenomenal about a mission trip is you go there, and a majority of people, unless you're the Grinch, you come back or this is pre-Grinch having a heart, you come back and you're like, man, this was amazing. I saw God do these things. I felt God working in my life. I felt like I was actually the hands and feet of Jesus. And you're excited to go back to do it. Well, on the mission trip, the thing no one talks about is, well, guess what? You don't got a whole lot of time for anything else. Like, you're down there in the mission trip, you may not have a lot of a good cell phone service, but down there, you're not going to be that guy on the mission trip that's sitting there checking your fantasy football 10 hours a week, because people will be like, man, I thought you came on a mission trip to serve, not just make sure you had the right lineup in. So when you go to these places and you're limited with it, it's amazing that once you eliminate some of these things, because you just can't, and when you have to do stuff and you're spending time with people, we realize it's a glimpse into, okay, this is what happens when I give of myself. But once we get back often to normal life, it's so easy to be distracted by things. And like I said, they may not be bad things. It's just people much smarter than me have said, you got to be careful of the things that they may not be bad things, but they distract you from really good things, or the really good things God has for you or wants you to be a part of. And that's kind of the, like you said, in talking about church and the things on Sunday, it's we don't want all your time coming like, oh, I'm going to doing church things, but it's taking what you learn and putting that into practice in the many avenues of your life.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's come back to this. What makes cislifeplus even more special and better all around is that it is for everyone. This platform has kids content for students, podcasts, music, and traditional content to help you grow as Christians. So there really is something for everyone on here. We hope you have had a chance to check it out. If not, please do. We'll be adding new material monthly, and we'll post on the social media channels when we do, so make sure to subscribe and follow our social media channels so you know when new content is released. Oh, let's get back to it. Let's talk about solutions moving forward. What do we do? Like, what's our goal as a church as we move forward? How do we lead our church into a mindset, a more mindset of really serving. And again, I think we really struggle. To be quite honest, like right. So, I mean, we got a great need in the children's ministry right now. We got a great need with the student ministries, and I don't want people to hear like this is not those ministries are really ministries that make impact in the next generation. So it's not really more like we don't want people to look at serving the children's ministry more like a task, as more like this is your chance, opportunity to really impact some lives, like immediately, every week, real impact, teaching the Bible, and sharing life, and showing these kids the way. But much more than that, and then you go outside this building, and there's a lot much bigger needs, right? So, how do we engage our church in this? How do you think what steps do you think we need to take to engage our church, our people, into step by step to have a lifestyle of serving others?
I think probably the starting point, not probably, the starting point has to be our relationship with Jesus, because that relationship and what it looks like and where it is has the biggest factor influence in these other areas. And I think like you framed it up, that's a key with it, because sometimes I think where people miss the opportunity or they miss the messaging on it, they think, okay, if I'm helping with the kids or students or whatever, they view it more as this is just a task, something to do, rather than looking at it as an opportunity to shape or help with some of these kids.
It's official. cislifeplus has launched, and we truly feel blessed to be able to reach people in and through the new way of online living.
Because a lot of people will tell you that we have different people throughout our life who are very impactful at certain stages in maybe who we are today, maybe who we aren't today, maybe what we're doing today or what we're not doing today, that come in at certain points. And I think if we were able to communicate and help people understand the impact, that it may be more influential with that. And I also think closely with that, it comes back to just serving in general, that statistically in the church, there's more, like Big C church, there's more people that aren't serving than are serving. And I'm not just talking about on Sunday mornings, but I'm like talking about throughout the life or wherever they find themselves at. And I think the more that we get engaged and serve in the everyday aspects of life, that would help transform what happens on Sunday mornings more if we were doing that. Because like we mentioned earlier, with going on a mission trip is powerful, because when you go and you serve others, and I mean you make a financial sacrifice to go on the trip. A lot of times you're going to sacrifice a week of vacation. You're going to sacrifice time away from potentially your family, and you go down there and you're out of your comfort zone. And then when you're serving, and there's all these things that you get past. And like I said, the feeling from it is you see things, you experience things in a way that you don't often experience. And so it can be life-changing for people. And the truth is, you don't need to jump on a plane and fly halfway around the world to get that. You can experience that in your neighborhood. You can experience that on your cul-de-sac. You can experience that in your church. But it's just taking that step and doing it. And for some reason, it's interesting is I don't know why churches have throughout my lifetime. Every church I've been in, there's always been at certain points a struggle for, with certain programs and ministries, a struggle for volunteers. And so I wonder, I mean, how we communicate that? Do we communicate that poorly? Do we communicate it in the wrong way? But it seems to be a common theme through every church I've been in my life that, yeah, there's certain things where it's great with volunteers, but there's other things where you're always, it's like you're paddling upstream.
I know it's pretty remarkable because it is. You have like sometimes 12% of the entire local church that actually engage in serving. And usually then the challenge that you got multiple people. You got the same person serving multiple ministries. Right? So whereas if you look at in any church setting, if you had 50% of the church serving locally, people would be serving every 3 to 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. And that would give them a chance to serve in the local church, spend time with their family sitting in a service. So I think, but I think still is missing is the purpose. Now, this is just personal opinion here, but I think the big mega church did not help. The idea is, and I can help think about the cultural impact of that is. I was just this past weekend. I was speaking at a Brazilian church in Tampa. Mm-hmm. It's a church of 650 people, and as I start talking to the staff, I was like, "Who's full-time staff here?" And 3 people are full-time staff. Mm-hmm. 2 people are part-time staff. Everybody else is volunteer. And it's interesting to me because that's a very nature of, for example, Brazilian churches, in that they operate heavily. So you have big like titles in church, like pastor of this, pastor of that, and they're volunteers. And I think again it goes to cultural impact, and I think in America we created this idea that we staff what we need to get the job done. In a big C church, that actually has been the model. Back in 2010, 2011, I got to go to a church in Florida and visit with a pastor friend of ours. And it was very interesting. It's a church back then. The church was like 16,000, 17,000 people, so a huge operation. Mm-hmm. And it was to the point where everybody on the worship team was paid staff. So think like that. Everybody in the worship team was paid staff, and so they have rehearsals, like they do a full run for Sunday service on Thursday, 9 a.m. So think about that for a second. Like, we don't have that, right? I mean, we by far the vast majority of our worship team, the only paid worship team that we have, it's Jeremy. Mm-hmm. He's the music director, but that's it. We're fully dependent on volunteers to run the show, and I think it's interesting because that was not the case. They're like full-time paid volunteers to play guitar and to play drums so it was interesting. Camera operators, lighting operators, everybody's paid. And after a few conversations, about how we do it in our church back then, and so the pastors the lead pastors and all that decide to like, we are not giving the church the opportunity to do this thing, to serve. So they decide to, overnight, they fire 40% of their staff. They just let them go. So they fire the worship team, they fire the camera guys, and they open up to the church to say, hey, we want you to serve. And here's the church. The church was waiting for. So in one Sunday, they got 1,200 people to sign up to volunteer, which is any church's dream right there.
Oh, yeah.
1,200 people fill out a form saying, I want to serve. But then the disaster happens. Because everything they put in that building, it was made with professional minds running it. Mm-hmm. And now they got a bunch of volunteers who never saw any of that kind of stuff, and the equipment. And it was a disaster. I mean, it was a disaster. I remember talking to the pastors like, Joe, we don't know what to do because this is a disaster. And they adjusted, and they bounced back, and they learned that they got to equip volunteers and train volunteers. Mm-hmm. But all this to say, I think we have some cultural differences here. I think in America, that's the model that has been the model for the church. Put some resources, put the people in place, do the ministry. And I think for some people's mindset is, this is the staff job. That's why we pay you, right? So if we're going to put the resources here, staff are going to do this, the staff should do the job. And in reality, I really see ourselves as being part of the process, not just doing the process for the church. We're just the facilitators. We should be doing the ministry together. We should be bringing the church volunteers alongside us. So they are the ones experiencing the ministry. We're just here opening the doors for them to do the ministry. So I always, the ministries that I have an opportunity to run with volunteers, I always say, this is your ministry. This is not my ministry. This is yours. You need you to do it. This is how you want to make this grow. How you want to, this is not mine. Stop thinking like this is Joey's ministry. Joey's the one running this department. No, this is not my thing. I'm not just here to facilitate your ministry in this church. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to open the people's eyes more to that fact. Christ Church, I think everybody that comes here on Sunday, everybody to join us online, everybody that goes to different campuses, this is your ministry. This is yours. So it's for you to be part of it. It's for you to be a part of the building process. So how you want to be part of it? I think people are just not going to make that decision. How do you want to be part of it? How you want to make an impact? We'll facilitate. We'll open the doors. We'll make sure things are in place. But this is yours. And I think if we can get our church to see that more, that this is the thing, take ownership. Just take ownership of your ministry because this is yours. You're here for a reason. I think we can get more people to serve because it's part of it. It's part of the experience. It's part of the discipleship process. It's part of we are, and it's how we're going to gain this community to church. So I think we need that. I think we really need to take more of that approach with our church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely, as we've seen, the mega churches there's been some great benefits to it, and then there's also been some effects or some impacts from it that it's kind of like earlier we were talking about. Sometimes, depending on where you live, you don't see all the needs, and I think that's a good description with the serving is with these churches over the years, the efficiency and with the programming and the things that were offered, it's easy to go in and you see this and you're like, well, I like this, but I like this for my kids, I like this for my family, but you're not seeing there's some needs with it, and like I said earlier, sometimes it goes back to we see what we want to see, and maybe we just don't look as closely or as intently into things as we should. And as we're finding out, I think more so now, it's with people not with not as many people across the board in church as there used to be. It's becoming even a more glaring issue or need that, okay, we need more people. We need more people to help serve and do things. But to your point, having that ownership and seeing that it's not mine. It's not my ministry. It's our ministry. And if we can ever do a better job of shifting that type of thinking, I think that that's going to be beneficial in the long run. But it is a much different type of thinking than I think about my first exposure to the mega churches. Where in Michigan our mega church was a cottage up north on a lake. So when I came down, and I've told this story before, I thought I needed to repent after I went to a service down in it was at Lakeside Christian Church down in northern Kentucky, and they were singing off the walls. I was like, this is unbiblical. There's no hymnal. They're singing off the wall with these songs. I was like, I don't know what the heck these songs are, but I keep saying the same line 15 times in a row, and I'm pretty sure this isn't in the hymnal. And I thought I needed to repent after that. I was like, what the heck is this? And welcome to the mega church. But I liked it because I could sneak in and sneak out.
Yeah.
So for me, it took a while with that before there's like, oh, you don't need to serve. I was like, oh man, these people just cater and do whatever I want. And so I think that is you go down there, and it's easy to fall into the trap of, hey, they're just doing this stuff for me. And it's like, hey, we need you to be a part of what's happening.
Yeah, it takes an effort, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, part of it. It's like, personally, everybody listening, we still can provide everything, but you still got to make an effort on your own to want it to do it. I mean, we cannot want it for you. We cannot want it for you to make a difference. We cannot want it for you to have an experience with God and others. We cannot want it for you to help others. You're gonna need to want that and make a little effort, and we're gonna meet you where you need.
Yep.
So yeah, it is great. I think that's great opportunities. Josh's Place is here. We're gonna have a special room here dedicated to help others. As kind of a food pantry. We'll look forward to it. I think there are opportunities for the church to serve. There's many others coming, many other opportunities coming for people to serve. So this is great conversation. So I'm going to have to do this again next week.
Yeah, I mean, I have to pull back the curtain a little bit on your Daytona experience.
Exactly. Long time ago.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. Gotta love those places, man.
Yeah, we made to take a trip down there and do a podcast from your
exactly.
old stomping grounds.
We'll do that. We have a traveling pack. We can do that. Well, it's good to talk to you, man.
It was good to talk to you, and hopefully those right now a little chaos in the city of Cincinnati, right? Bengals 0-2. No one saw that coming.
I know, but
except God.
No one saw that coming.
God did.
Yeah, come on now. I mean, I know I don't like football, but I know better. I mean, come on now. I mean, how'd that podcast going about football?
Well, it's going pretty good. The one thing we will probably talk about in the next episode is just I read a book, and we had to read it in elementary, called The Whipping Boy. And I kind of feel like that book was, I didn't know it, but it was a story of Matt James. But he just, man, if I'm a Cincinnati fan and if I go to Christ Church, I see Matt, I don't condone violence, but I would threaten him. You go to a game, I'm going to fight you, because he goes to the games and they lose. Like he didn't go to the playoff games last year. Like there's certain people on our staff that can go when they win. Matt he just brings the L's.
Here's what I don't understand, though. We're going to close the podcast here with this. Let people give people some entertainment. That's the environment here. I don't understand. So in 30 seconds, explain this to me. How can somebody who claims to be devoted to football and understand the ins and outs, you spend hours and hours and hours, God knows how many hours, playing Madden, and loses on a fantasy football to a part-time communications director who doesn't understand jack about football? Explain that one to me, like quickly. Just let the audience understand a little bit about. Because I cannot explain that because I don't understand football. I don't even like it.
I mean, there's a lot of flukes in fantasy football, but it's probably the same way that the last 2 years in our family league, I've lost in the championship to my wife. It's criminal. I just think it's the Lord hitting the smite button, to be honest with you. Smite.
On that note, we're going. I'll see you all later.
Thanks for joining us this week on Let's Talk Podcast. Make sure to check us out at cislifeplus.com, where you can listen to past episodes and subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. And one more thing. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating on iTunes and tell someone about the show. Until next time.